Hello, my friends. How are you? It's good to be learning with you on... maybe I need to stop playing that music. So today is Tzom Tammuz, the 17th of Tammuz. It's a fast day. So we're all a little weak if we're fasting. That means that we're in the 3 weeks. So we might have to go to the bird sounds. I gotta go to the bird sounds. Good to remember. Okay. And we are mourning the destruction of the temple, which that process began. I guess the siege began on the 10th of Teves. The Romans breached the wall on this date in history, and then it was destroyed on the 9th of Av. So we're entering that period of mourning. We definitely diminish our joy. Who's in the house? Guy in Ohio, Renee in Indiana, Yehuda in South Carolina, Melissa in Great Neck, Joe in the Inland Empire, Bella in Florida, Gail in Kansas City, Bill in Missouri, Lorraine in Texas. Also, my 81st birthday today. Feeling grateful and blessed. Yom Huledet Sameach. You should have such a happy birthday. And many more to 120. Lorraine, it's you're very dear to us. It's very special that you're in the class. Love to see your name every time. Joseph in Sierra Nevada, Shendor in the Bronx, and Matt in Eau Claire. Welcome everybody. Also, Chaim in Florida, Aoife in Florida, Marie in New York, and Bito de Panama. Bienvenido, Bito. Okay, let's get into it. Our daf today. You can tell when it's been summer fast days are tough, and now there's 2, right? So now we have another one in 3 weeks, which is like a fast like Yom Kippur, full 25 hours. This is a daytime fast, but it's such a long day in the summer, it might as well be a full 25-hour fast. The fast breaks here in LA at 8:46 p.m. Okay, our daf today's page 26 here in Tractate Avoda Zara, the 27th volume of the Talmud. Today we open Mishna number 2 here in chapter 2. And again, important reminder, when we're reading about these ordinances and decrees of the sages with respect to the relations between Jews and the idolaters around them, it's very important to understand that we don't extend these laws to non-Jews today. There are definite differences in these provisions because the idolaters that surrounded the sages in the Roman Empire particularly, there was some danger in the Jewish community in Bavel, which was part of the Persian Empire, but not much, not nearly, compared to the terrible, terrible persecution and at times genocide in the Roman Empire. And even when things were relatively peaceful, the fact was that, first of all, these idolaters were steeped in idolatry, which is prohibited, but also in violence against the Jews. You know, they could pretty easily kill a Jew and get away with it. So it was something that we always needed to be afraid of. And they were wont to do it. In addition to engaging in these other immoral practices that we've been talking about for the last few days. So it's very much in that context that we read. Mishnah number 2. A Jewish woman may not deliver the child of an idolatress. That is the way it's translated in the art scroll, a female idolater. But the art scroll actually says an idolatress. Idolater is the male and idolatress is the female. Okay, so a Jewish woman may not deliver the child of an idolatress because in doing so, she is delivering a child who will engage in idolatry. But one may allow an idolatress to deliver the child of a Jewish woman. And similarly, a Jewish woman may not nurse the child of an idolatress, but one may allow an idolatress to nurse the child of a Jewish woman while the idolatress is on the Jewish woman's property. That's the Mishnah, now the Gemara. The Gemara cites a dispute related to the ruling of our Mishnah. The sages taught a Jewish woman may not deliver the child of an idolatress because in doing so, she is delivering a child who will engage in idolatry and idol worship. And one may not allow an idolatress to deliver the child of a Jewish woman because the idolaters are suspected of bloodshed. This is the statement of Rabbi Meir. And the rabbis say, one may allow an idolatress to deliver the child of a Jewish woman when other women are standing over her watching her actions, but not when they are alone together. And Rabbi Meir says, even when other women are standing over her, one may not allow the idolatress to deliver the child of a Jewish woman because there are times when this midwife places her hand on the infant's temple and kills him by applying pressure to the area, and the act is not seen. Now remember, this is not some kind of far-fetched paranoia. They had to pass these ordinances because these things happen. The Gemara relates a story that validates this concern, and this is like that incident involving a certain idolatress who said to her fellow idolatress, "You are the midwife of Jewish women, the daughter of a midwife of Jewish women." And this was meant as an insult. In response, the other idolatress said to her, "May as many evils befall that woman," meaning you, "as the number of Jewish infants that I have killed, as I extract blood from them like the foam of a river." So this idolatrous midwife, this non-Jewish midwife, claimed to have caused the deaths of many Jewish children. Now the Gemara clarifies the opinion of the rabbis, and the rabbis, who are not concerned to the same extent as Rabbi Meir, would say to you, that is not so. It was merely through words that this particular Gentile midwife was establishing herself. In other words, she was bragging in order to intimidate her antagonist, whereas in reality, she did not kill any infants. Right? But you have to see, imagine that she's living in a society where there's a true event that this woman who was not Jewish, from this idolatrous community, perhaps she had accepted the Noahide commandments on herself, which would make her a ger toshav, and had a good relationship with the Jews, and the Jews trusted her to be a midwife. But that brought upon her the enmity of other idolaters, which was dangerous to her, and she felt that she had to defend herself by saying, "Well, don't worry, I kill lots of Jews." That's how bad it was, that situation. And I'll tell you something, the last time I read this, or let's say the first time I read this when I was making my way through the Daf Yomi cycle a number of years ago, it's actually 2 cycles ago was the first time, this seemed, okay, I can understand that there are people who hate Jews in the world, but Okay, at least we don't live in a society that has any kinds of issues like that. There might be Jew haters in America, but they scurry in the corners. They wouldn't feel the need to brag to each other how much they hate the Jewish people and how many Jews they've killed. And now, I mean, it's like there have been times in history when a social hysteria of hatred flows through a society, like in Nazi Germany, and other periods in history where these kinds of attitudes shift so fast. And you see all kinds of people now, people who used to be anchors of, network news, telling just outright terrible lies about the Jewish people, blood libel, all kinds of horror, and then young, gullible people, not so young, but gullible and easily manipulated people suddenly hopping on the hate wagon against the Jews. And I mean, we're just seeing it happen in real time, and please God, this kind of thing should be stopped. And thank God that the Jewish people have staunch allies in this time, where people, who share our biblical values, traditional values, and can tell the difference between truth and falsehood. It's incredible what's going on there. Let's continue. The Mishna teaches that a Jewish woman may not nurse the child of an idolatrous, and the sages taught a Jewish woman may not nurse the child of an idolatrous because in doing so, she is effectively raising a child who will engage in idol worship. And one may not allow an idolatress to nurse the child of a Jewish woman because she is suspected of bloodshed, right? Violence against the Jews, that she would murder a Jewish baby. And this is the statement of Rabbi Meir. And the rabbis say one may allow an idolatress to nurse the child of a Jewish woman when other women are standing over her, but not when the idolatress is alone together with the child. And Rabbi Meir says even when other women are standing over her, one may not allow the idolatress to nurse the Jewish child, because there are times when she smears poison intended for the baby upon her breast when she is outside the house and subsequently kills him while nursing. The Gemara remarks, and it is necessary for the dispute between Rabbi Meir and the rabbis to be stated with regard to both the case of the midwife and that of the wet nurse. The reason is that if the Tana had taught us only the law of the midwife, one might assume that it is only in that case that the rabbis say that it is permitted to allow the idolatress to deliver a Jewish infant because it is not possible for her to kill him due to the fact that other women see her. But with regard to a wet nurse, it is possible that she might smear poison upon her breast while she's still outside the house and then kill him with it. So then one might say that the rabbis concede to Rabbi Meir that the idolatress may not be allowed to nurse the son of a Jewish woman under any circumstances. And if the Tana had taught us only the law of the wet nurse, one might assume that it is only in that case that Rabbi Meir said that it is prohibited for the idolatress to nurse a Jewish infant due to the fact that she might smear poison upon her breast while outside the house and kill him with it. But with regard to a midwife, since it is not possible for her to kill him where other women are standing over her, one might say that Rabbi Meir concedes to the rabbis, and the Gemara concludes it is therefore necessary for this dispute to be stated in both cases. Now, new subject. Based on the above discussion, all agree that a Jewish woman may not deliver the child of an idolatress, and the Gemara raises a contradiction from a Baraisa. A Jewish woman may deliver the child of an Aramean woman in exchange for payment, but not for free. Rav Yosef said in response, it is permitted to exchange for payment due to the enmity that would be engendered if Jews refuse to deliver the infants of these surrounding peoples, these idolaters, despite being offered money to do so. Right? Again, it's not that the Jews have some kind of a racism against these people. It is true that we have a law against idolatry, which is a law that applies to all humans, not just Jews. And so we have to, distance ourselves from it and not participate in it. But where keeping that distance could actually bring bloodshed, violence upon the Jewish people, okay, so then you have to have, you may have to alter the policy, right? And so in that case, you might have to be willing to participate, as a Jewish woman acting as a paid midwife in such a birth for the idolaters, if the only option is if you don't do that, then it's going to bring harm to the Jewish people. Rav Yosef thought to say delivering the child of an idolatress on Shabbos in exchange for payment is permitted due to enmity, right, to save Jewish lives. Abaye said to him, the concern of enmity, right, that they will wreak violence on us, actually does not apply here, because she can say to the idolater, with regard to our own women, we keep Shabbos, so we desecrate Shabbos for them. With regard to your women who do not keep Shabbos, we do not desecrate Shabbos for them. So if you need somebody to deliver your child on Shabbos, please go somewhere else. Rav Yosef also thought to say, obviously if there was an emergency, it might be different. If not responding to the emergency would endanger life. Rav Yosef also thought to say, nursing the child of an idolatrous woman, in exchange for payment is permitted for the same reason, to avoid violent harm from the neighbors. Abaye said to him, the concern of enmity does not apply because she can say, if she is unmarried, I wish to get married. She can't become a wet nurse before she's married. And if she's a married woman, she may say, I do not wish to become repulsive to my husband, since she can provide a reasonable excuse for refusing to nurse the child of an idolatress. The concern of enmity does not apply. She's not saying I have something against you and your people. It's that she has a personal issue that prevents her from becoming a wet nurse. Rav Yosef thought to say a similar idea concerning that which is taught in a Baraisa with regard to idolaters and shepherds of small domesticated animals, which would actually even include Jewish shepherds of small domesticated animals. What is this? Shepherds of small domesticated animals? What do we have against them? And we've learned this elsewhere. The issue is that this shepherding practice, as it was performed in this period in history, even in Israel, even by Jewish shepherds of this sort, is that they were habitual thieves, right? That when they would shepherd their flocks of, I guess, small goats or smaller animals, whatever it was, they would just let them run freely wherever they wanted, even, consuming the produce of fields owned by other people without asking permission. So this was a kind of an unsavory profession that was filled with thieves. And so, we don't let them testify as witnesses, and we're going to treat them like idolaters, right? They're being treated like idolaters during this period in history. Right? So Rav Yosef thought so he's drawing an analogy about how we don't participate in idolatry with something else, right? That we, with regard to these idolaters and shepherds of small domesticated animals, one may not raise them out of a pit and one may not lower them into a pit, right? So in other words, you don't endanger their lives on purpose. You don't lower them into a pit, throw them into a pit where they might not get out and they might perish. But if they put themselves in that situation, we don't go out of our way to save their lives either, because the world is better without them. One may not lower that. We don't raise them out of a pit. We don't lower them into a pit. Rav Yosef suggested, even so, it is permitted to raise them from the pit in exchange for payment due to enmity. Abaye said to him, it is prohibited to raise an idolater from a pit even in exchange for payment, because one can say an excuse to him, such as, sorry, my son is standing on the roof and I must go use this ladder to help him down from the roof. Let somebody else bring you out of the pit. Alternatively, he can say to him, a time has been appointed for me to appear in the courthouse and I must attend to this matter. Since the Jew can provide a legitimate excuse for refusing to aid the idolater, there's no need to extract him from the pit. Let somebody else do that. Apropos the notion of raising someone or lowering him into a pit, the Gemara notes that Rabbi Abahu taught the following while standing before Rabbi Yochanan. With regard to idolaters and shepherds of domesticated animals, one may not raise them from a pit. Now we're on page 26b. And one may not lower them into a pit. But heretics, informers, and apostates are lowered into a pit and not raised out of it. Right, now these are Jews. Here we're talking about Jews. But heretics, these are people who declare there is no God, loud and proud, and even try to sort of seduce pious Jews away from Torah. These are people who just deny the existence of God, etc. Informers, even worse. These are people who work with the Roman authority to persecute and kill Jews. And apostates, which are lowered into a pit but not raised out of it. So Rabbi Yochanan said to Rabbi Abahu, I teach the verse, and so shall you do with every lost item of your brother, in Deuteronomy 22:3, where you have to return, right, that which is lost, that which your brother has lost, right? So if a fellow Jew has lost something and you find it, it's now a commandment that you return it to him. You have to go find him. If it's an animal, you have to take care of it until you can find him and return it. It's a big obligation to return these lost objects. And Rabbi Yochanan is saying to Rabbi Abahu that obligation to return the lost objects of your brother includes the lost objects of an apostate. And you say that one may lower him into a pit. Remove the term apostate from this list. So the Gemara asks, and let Rabbi Abahu answer Rabbi Yochanan as follows. Here, with regard to a lost item, the verse includes an apostate because it is referring to an apostate who eats non-kosher meat due to his appetite. Right? This is somebody who, it's inconvenient for him to follow Torah laws. He really wants to eat that non-kosher food. He really wants to have, sex outside of marriage. Etc. It's not that he knows it's wrong. He knows that the Torah forbids him to do that, but he can't help himself. That's the definition of an apostate here. Conversely, and so that we don't lower him into a pit, and probably would pull him out of it too. Conversely, there, with regard to raising an apostate from a pit, I am referring to, says Rabbi Abahu, I am referring to an apostate who eats non-kosher meat to express insolence. And the Gemara answers, Rabbi Abahu holds that one who eats non-kosher meat to express insolence, another one who's saying that the Torah is nonsense, God forbid, this is not an apostate, this is a heretic. Now, there's a note here about heretics and informers. Right? So it is a mitzvah to completely annihilate heretics and informers because they are the bane of the Jewish people and steer the chosen nation away from God, which brings harm to the Jewish people and the whole world. Now, the halachic authorities write that these directives with regard to heretics and apostates were issued only to protect the nation from spiritual harm. And the Hazon Ish writes that since nowadays taking such harsh actions would be pointless and counterproductive because so many Jews have lost the way and don't even know what their obligations are. They're actually like kidnapped babies. So even when they say, that they think that the Bible is nonsense, etc., God forbid, when they say such things, they don't even know what they're rejecting. They've never been exposed to proper Torah learning. And we're just living in a time when just so many Jews have forgotten they're Jewish, never knew they were Jewish. Even if they knew they were Jewish, they turned their backs on Judaism without knowing what Judaism is, etc. And so here it says, the Hazon Ish, it says you don't, these laws no longer apply for that reason. And rather, it is incumbent upon the Jewish people to do everything in their power to reach out to such Jews with love and kindness so that they return to the light of Torah. That's so much of what we're doing here. So much of what we're doing here. And please pray for us that we should always broaden our reach and be able to reach more Jews. And that the Rebbe, Nina and I are not Chabad, but we have tremendous love and respect for the Chabad community. And we honor the Lubavitcher Rebbe of blessed memory, who created just an army of emissaries taking Torah and Judaism everywhere in the world to make it available to Jews wherever they are, and reaching out with love and kindness to try to show them, what you've given up or what you didn't even know you're disconnected from is calling to you. It's so beautiful. You're a Jew. Yes, there are obligations. Like today on a fast day, it's not so easy. But the meaning and joy and significance of being connected to this more than 3,000-year-old tradition so outweighs, the challenges. Come back, Jews. Come back to Torah. The Torah is always waiting for you because God is always waiting for you. And all people, right? All people are obligated in the Noahide commandments. All people, God is waiting for you to come back and have a relationship with God. Your creator, God created all people. All humans are God's children. And he's waiting for all of them to come back. And they should know what the Noahide commandments are that obligate everyone, starting with know that there is a God. Know that you were created by an infinite being who cares about you, loves you, who put a Torah in the world and created these laws, and who has outlawed murder and adultery and rape and all kinds of prohibited sex, sex outside of marriage, and robbery and theft. I mean, God is waiting for all of us. Okay. Let's continue. It was stated with regard to the definition of an apostate that Rav Acha and Ravina disagree. One says that someone who transgresses a prohibition due to his appetite is an apostate, while one who transgresses a prohibition in order to express insolence toward God is a heretic. And the other one says that even one who expresses insolence toward God is an apostate, and rather, who is considered a heretic? An idolater. Right? It's not just one who turns his back on all religion, including, which includes God and Judaism. According to that view, even he is not a heretic. A heretic is one who bows to idols. The Gemara raised an objection from a Baraisa against the opinion that one who sins to express insolence is a heretic. The Baraisa teaches if one ate a single flea or a single mosquito, he is considered an apostate. We're not permitted to eat those things if he's a Jew. The Gemara clarifies the objection, but here it must be assumed that the insect was eaten to express insolence, as it is unappetizing, and yet this Baraisa teaches that one who eats a flea or mosquito is an apostate, not a heretic. And the Gemara answers there he desires to experience the taste of forbidden food, and therefore he is considered to be eating only due to temptation, even one who eats a flea or a mosquito. And the Gemara, because he's curious, the Gemara returns to the subject of lowering someone into a pit. The master said, heretics, informers, and apostates are lowered into a pit but not raised out of it. And the Gemara analyzes this statement now that it is known that one actively lowers them into a pit. Is it necessary to teach that one does not raise them from it? And Rav Yosef Bar Chama said that Rav Sheshes says, no, it is necessary to teach this law because it can be inferred from here that if there was a ledge on the pit, we scrape it off so that the one in the pit cannot ascend from it. And we employ a pretext and say that we're removing the ledge so that animals do not descend upon one in the pit while he is trapped in the pit. But it would be better if an informer never comes out of that pit. Another example of informers in more recent history, we're talking about the 1800s, but more recently than in Roman times, Talmudic times, you had under the Tsar in Russia that and Jews living in the Pale of Settlement, that area where the borders kept changing, but Poland, Ukraine, Russia. And it would happen that when the Tsar's army came and was grabbing conscripts, right, grabbing poor people who weren't protected by some measure of protection from being grabbed in this way, they would just be taken and drafted into the army. Right now in America, we haven't had a draft in quite a while. I remember I did have to register for selective service when I became 18. But when there was a draft, okay, if there was a war, you went to fight in the war, and then when the war ended, you went home. And if there was no war, it might be a 2-year stint. In Israel, everyone serves in the army, right? And then, if you want to, and if you don't want to become an officer and stay in the army, then I think the time is either 2 years, maybe 3 years in some cases. But you serve, it's important, and you're serving your country. But in the Tsar's army, when they took you, it was for 25 years, right? And in the Tsar's army, there was no way that you could get kosher food or wear a kippah or pray in the morning or do anything related to being Jewish. They would beat you and kill you if they caught you doing that. So to be taken by the Tsar's army was like a death sentence for a Jew. And so what did the Jewish families do? They hid their soldier age sons from those Cossack conscriptors when they came through. And then there were some Jews, usually alcoholics, who had somehow some other way gotten in trouble and then became informers and would rat out these families who were hiding their sons. Now, that kind of informer is a mortal threat to a Jewish community in 1800s Tsarist Russia. And so there was a story that I'm sure there were multiple stories, but there's one that I'm aware of because it took place in the shtetl where my family lived. I didn't know about it through family lore. I learned it later when I visited that place and then read about it. But there was an informer there, and then a prominent Rebbe passed through town, and the two rabbis joined with this Rebbe and said, we've got to get rid of this informer because he is endangering the lives of all these young sons of Jewish families. And they took matters into hand, and they threw him into the furnace underneath the mikveh or underneath the bathhouse. So that really happened in Jewish history. Of course, then that Rebbe got in a lot of trouble because the Russian authorities heard about it. And they would have killed him, except they were always willing to take a bribe, and they took the bribe to let him live. Okay, let's keep going here. So that's about informers, right? That's why they're not raised out of a pit. Right, so Rav Yosef Bar Chama and Rav Sheshes said, no, it is necessary to teach this law because it can be inferred from here that what I just read. Okay, Rab and Rav Yosef both say a different answer. No, it is necessary to teach this, as it can be inferred from here, that if there was a stone at the mouth of the well that one had fallen into, so we cover it and say that he is covering it in order to pass his animals over it. And Ravina said, one can learn from here that if there was a ladder in the pit, we remove it and say, I require the ladder to lower my son from the roof. And, it's not like we're going to kill the informer, but we're not going to save his life. The Gemara discusses the subject of assisting or receiving aid from an idolater in the context of bris milah, meaning circumcision, right? But we say bris milah, right, because it's the covenant. It's a covenant. This is such an important commandment, right, that Jewish males must be circumcised. We don't do it, it's interesting that it became a common practice in America and other countries in recent times for medical or sanitary reasons. But that's not why it was done. It wasn't some, advanced knowledge of science and medicine that led Jews to circumcise. We do it because God said so. God told Abraham to do it. He did it, and we've done it ever since. And it is a kind of living, walking, ever-present connection to God and Torah, because God said to circumcise. This is a very important commandment, for Jewish males. So the question is, who can perform the circumcision? That's what we're examining here. The sages taught a Jew may circumcise an idolater for the sake of making him a convert, right? So he's going to leave idolatry, he's going to become a Jew. He needs to have a circumcision. And so before he has that circumcision, he's not a Jew. So in this context, we can circumcise an idolater. This is to the exclusion of circumcising a Gentile for the sake of removing a worm, which is not permitted, as it is forbidden to perform this practice on a Gentile. But one may not allow a Gentile to circumcise a Jew in any situation, because Gentiles, or really idolaters in this context, are suspected of bloodshed, right? They're always suspected of wanting to kill Jews. This is the statement of Rabbi Meir. And the rabbis say one may allow an idolater to circumcise a Jew while others are standing over him and observing his actions, but not when they are alone together. And Rabbi Meir says even where others are standing over him, it is also not permitted, as there are times when the idolater might tilt the knife and render the Jew whose penis has been severed, and he will be unable to father children. That's how bad that, hatred was and how dangerous these idolaters were to the Jews. And the Gemara asks, but does Rabbi Meir hold that one may not allow an idolater to circumcise a Jew? And the Gemara raised a contradiction against his claim from the following Baraisa. In a city in which there is no Jewish physician, and in which there is a Samaritan physician and an Aramaean physician, it is preferable that the Aramaean circumcise the Jewish boys of the city and the Samaritan not circumcise them. Right? So let's go back. We've talked about the Samaritans quite a bit. But to review, they are the people that were brought into the Holy Land after the Assyrian conquest of the northern kingdom in the first temple period, where there was an exile. Right, the 10 lost tribes is because the tribes of the northern kingdom were all taken away by the Assyrian king Sennacherib. And then he brought other people to settle the land, known as the Samaritans. Now, the Samaritans were not Jewish or anything like Jewish, but once they settled in Israel, they started having problems that they were getting attacked by lions. They realized that apparently the Promised Land only wants to have Jews in it, and so they converted to Judaism, but it was considered a coerced conversion. It wasn't wholehearted because they were afraid for their lives because the lions were attacking them. Now, and so they're known as lion converts, and they took on a lot of Jewish practices in some areas, but not in all. They didn't really accept the authority of the sages and the oral law. They interpreted the written law of the Torah in their own ways. And so, while there's some, overlap between Samaritan practice and Judaism and Jewish tradition, Jewish law, not enough that they were considered Jews at all times. Aramaeans were the surrounding, the idolaters living in the land or around the land. And here we're learning that it might be preferable to have an idolater, an Aramaean, perform the circumcision if he's a qualified doctor and there's no Jew to do it, rather than a Samaritan doctor. We'll get into why in a moment. But I learned something today that you might find fascinating because we had a lecture this morning at our shul. What was his name? He's a rabbi and a PhD in zoology who created the Biblical Museum of Natural History in Bet Shemesh in Israel. I want to go the next time I'm in Israel. It sounds absolutely fascinating. Not to be confused with the Biblical Zoo. That's something else. This is the Biblical Museum of Natural History. But he examines sort of the all kinds of aspects of animals in Jewish law and Jewish history. And we have a saying that's in the Mishna in Pirkei Avos, where I think it's 520, where it's Ben Tema says, be as I believe it's as swift. Be as what is it? As quick as a leopard. I don't think it's quick. I can't remember right now. Somebody look it up for me. Swift as a deer, light as an eagle, and strong as a lion, to perform the will of our God, our Creator. Right? So what's interesting about that, I'm going to get to lions in a moment because there were lions in Israel, right? This is based on animals that actually were in the Holy Land, and that's why they're mentioned in the Bible as opposed to animals that were not present in the Holy Land. Are there lions in Israel now? No, there are not. Were there lions throughout, most of the history? Certainly like the history as long as lions existed, sort of like ancient history, yes. And even until a few hundred years ago, there were lions. Eventually, they were wiped out because they were dangerous predators. But there were lions in Israel. And I actually asked, what do these lions look like? Like a lion with a mane, or like mountain lions like we have in California? And yeah, lions with a mane. Asiatic lions, not African lions, so a little bit smaller than the African lions. But, lions with a full mane lived in Israel. And what the rabbi taught us this morning, when you say to be as strong as a lion, what does that mean? There are other animals that are stronger than lions, right? Elephants are stronger than lions. They're larger, more. A lion cannot knock down a tree. An elephant can knock down a tree. So what does it mean, strong as a lion? Fascinating. What is a group of lions called? A pride, right? A pride of lions. Lions live in groups. What's a group of tigers called? A catastrophe. Tigers do not live in groups, right? Tigers, when they have large cats, they're so aggressive that they will only fight, establish a territory, and then go their own way. Lions live in groups because they are able to set aside their natural ferocious instinct and live in harmony with each other. Now, there's limits to this, in establishing territory. I've seen the nature shows where, the male lion will kill the cubs of a different family, of a different male lion, in order to establish his dominance. I mean, these are not moral creatures. But nevertheless, they do live in groups and put aside that ferocity. So as a metaphor, to be strong as a lion means that you can conquer your own impulse, which we also learn. Who is strong? One who conquers his impulse in Pirkei Avos. To be as light as an eagle is a mistranslation, right? There are no eagles in the Holy Land. Maybe there's some now that have been introduced. There were no eagles there. And so what was actually the bird that was being referred to is the griffin vulture, which is the highest flying of all animals. The griffin vulture that rides thermals doesn't even really flap its wings. It just can soar, right, with its wings outspread and ride these rising air currents. And they have been recorded to be as high as 37,000 feet. Can you imagine that? I mean, humans can't breathe up there. That's where, 747s fly. It's 37,000 feet. It's incredible that these griffin vultures go up that high. Swift as a deer, also mistranslation. This has to do with when these traditions were brought into Northern Europe, where there were deer and there were not gazelles. And so the proper translation is swift as a gazelle because it talks about an animal that has horns that are not branched. And that's why it means a gazelle. So interesting, right? Very interesting. But a beautiful lesson about lions, that to be strong as a lion means to conquer your impulse. Okay, getting back to the Samaritans, the lion converts. That's how we got here. Says Rabbi Yehuda, it is preferable. First, who speaks first? Rabbi Meir, right? So in a place where there is no Jewish physician, where there's a Samaritan physician, right, and an Aramean physician, it is preferable that the Arameans circumcise the Jewish boys of the city. He's a qualified doctor, rather than the Samaritans, right? The Samaritan at least is not an idolater. He holds by the written Torah, even if he doesn't hold by the many other aspects of Judaism. So he's not an idolater. So that's the statement of Rabbi Meir. But Rabbi Yehuda says it is preferable that the Samaritan circumcise the boys and the Aramean not circumcise them. Rabbi Meir holds that it is preferable for an Aramean non-Jew to perform circumcision, despite the fact that the Samaritans are considered Jewish to a certain extent. Now, the Gemara answers reverse their opinion, so that Rabbi Meir says it is preferable that the Samaritan circumcise the boys and not the Aramean, and Rabbi Yehuda says it is preferable that the Aramean circumcise them and not the Samaritan. And the Gemara asks, and does Rabbi Yehuda hold that it is permitted for circumcision to be performed by an Aramean, right, who's an idolater, absolutely not Jewish at all? Do we allow him to perform a circumcision on a Jew? Obviously, if we have a Jewish doctor, we use the Jew. But if there's no other possibility, do we allow the Aramean to do it? But isn't it taught in a Baraisa that Rabbi Yehuda says, from where is it derived with regard to circumcision performed by a Gentile, right, by a non-Jew, that it is not valid? It is derived from a verse, as it is stated, and God said to Abraham, and as for you, you shall keep my covenant, you and your seed after you throughout your generations. Genesis 17:9. So my covenant, beriti, here is a reference to circumcision, berit milah. And therefore, the verse is teaching that only Abraham and his descendants, i.e. the Jews, are qualified to perform circumcision. So rather, the Gemara suggests, actually do not reverse it. And as for the apparent contradiction between the two statements of Rabbi Meir, the Gemara explains, and what are we dealing with here? We're dealing with an expert physician who will not risk his reputation by harming a child. So we don't have the danger of bloodshed. And this is similar to that which Rabbi Yochanan said, as when Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael to Babylonia, he said that Rabbi Yochanan says, if the physician was considered a recognized expert, it is permitted for one to be healed by him. When Rabbi Meir said that an Aramean may circumcise a Jewish boy, he was referring specifically to a doctor who is known for his expertise. We're on 27a, just getting a little start on tomorrow. The latter clause of the Baraisa states that Rabbi Yehuda maintains that a Samaritan may circumcise a Jewish infant. And the Gemara asks, and does Rabbi Yehuda actually hold that it is permitted for a Samaritan to perform circumcision? But isn't it taught in the Baraisa, a Jew may circumcise a Samaritan, but a Samaritan may not be allowed to circumcise a Jew because he circumcises him for the sake of Mount Gerizim. And this is the statement of Rabbi Yehuda. So Mount Gerizim is not the Temple Mount. What's going on here is that when in the beginning of the Second Temple period, when the Jews came back from the Babylonian exile and eventually began to construct the Second Temple, the Samaritans, who had not been exiled in the conquest of Nebuchadnezzar at the end of the First Temple period, now, they had kind of like flourished while the Jews were away, and they set up their own temple on Mount Gerizim, right? And so definitely not authorized, not the Holy Temple. One of the clear ways that we say that the Samaritans are not Jewish, even though they hold by the written Torah to some extent. And they even sought to interfere with the Jews building the Second Temple, denounced them, created all kinds of problems for them. And there was real enmity between the Jews and the Samaritans. Later, that things calmed down, but we still maintain these distinctions. But the idea that the Samaritans would do something for the sake of Mount Gerizim means for the sake of their own version of the temple, which they were monogamous, they weren't idolaters, but they were very much outside of Judaism, so they weren't doing something for the sake of Torah the way we state that do things need to be done for the sake of God via Torah. Where am I? This is the statement of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yosei said to him, and where do we find that the mitzvah of circumcision from the Torah must be performed for the sake of fulfilling God's will? Rather, a Samaritan may continue to circumcise Jews until his soul leaves his body, i.e. until the Samaritan dies, and there's no room for concern. Meaning that a circumcision that's properly performed is a circumcision. It doesn't have to be that the one who performs the circumcision has in mind that he is fulfilling God's will by performing a circumcision under Torah law. So rather, actually, you should reverse the opinions, and the Baraisa says we reversed them initially. And as for the difficulty raised with regard to one statement, Rabbi Yehuda, against the other statement, Rabbi Yehuda, that opinion that the Gentile may not perform circumcision is actually the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. Conversely, the first Baraisa, which is reversed and therefore cites Rabbi Yehuda as maintaining that an Aramean may perform circumcision, is referring to Rabbi Yehuda bar Eli. Accordingly, the different opinions reflect a dispute between Tanaim rather than a contradiction. The Gemara cites a proof that according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, a Gentile is not qualified to perform circumcision, as it is taught in the Baraisa that Rebbe says, from where is it derived with regard to circumcision performed by a Gentile that it is not valid? The verse states, and God said to Abraham, and as for you, you shall keep my covenant, you and your seed after you throughout the generations. Meaning, and it's the people who perform the bris, the circumcision, have to be Jews themselves. It was stated that according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, circumcision must be performed for the sake of fulfilling a mitzvah, whereas Rabbi Yosei holds that no particular intention by the circumcisor is necessary. The Gemara analyzes these opinions. Rav Chisda said, what is the reasoning of Rabbi Yehuda? As it is written, and when a stranger shall sojourn with thee and will keep the Passover to the Lord, let all his males be circumcised. It can be inferred from the verse that the males must be circumcised to the Lord, i.e. for the sake of fulfilling God's will. And the Gemara asks, and what is the reasoning of Rabbi Yosef? It is written, he must be circumcised, himol yimol, that doubling of the verb. And the usage of the doubled verb teaches that circumcision may be performed by anyone, right? Mila means circumcision. Bris means covenant, the covenant of circumcision. Here the verb mila or meal, himol, yimol, the same root, is being interpreted, one of these doublings, like he must indeed be circumcised. Verily he shall be circumcised. It's important that he be circumcised. But the sage who's interpreting it this way is learning out that doubling also teaches us that it doesn't have to be a Jew who does it. And the Gemara asks, and according to the other sage, i.e. Rabbi Yosef, isn't it written, to the Lord let all his males be circumcised, which indicates that circumcision must be performed for the sake of fulfilling God's will. And the Gemara answers, that is written with regard to Pesach, Passover. According to Rabbi Yosef, the phrase to the Lord is referring to the previous mention of the paschal offering rather than to circumcision, which comes in the same place in the Torah. Accordingly, the verse should be read, will keep Passover to the Lord. And the Gemara asks, and according to the other sage, Rabbi Yehuda, isn't it also written, he must be circumcised, himol yimol, indicating that circumcision must be performed by, may be performed by anyone? And the Gemara answers, the Torah spoke in the language of people, i.e. the doubled verb is the usual style of the Torah, which does not serve to teach a novel law according to this view, whereas the other sage says it does. The Gemara continues. It was stated, from where is it derived that with regard to circumcision performed by a Gentile that it is not valid? Daru Bar Papa says in the name of Rab, this is derived from a verse. As it is stated, and God said to Abraham, and as for you, you shall keep my covenant, you and your seed after you throughout your generations. And Rabbi Yochanan says that it is derived from the verse, he must be circumcised, himol yimol. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, this verse teaches that a Jew must be circumcised by one who is already circumcised, right? The opposite derivation from the himol yimol, meaning that it must be performed by a Jew. Only one who is circumcised may perform the circumcision as a matter of the covenant. And the Gemara asks, what is the practical difference between these two opinions? There is a practical difference between them with regard to an Arab. Arabs circumcise, right? The Ishmaelites circumcise. Because they are descendants of Abraham also. Not through Isaac, but through Ishmael. So they don't circumcise according to Torah law. In fact, they do it, I believe, when they're 13. But they are circumcised. So do we allow an Arab to perform a circumcision on a Jew is what's being asked. There is a practical difference between them with regard to a circumcised Arab or a circumcised hill person. According to the one who says that the law that a Jewish infant may be circumcised only by one who has been circumcised himself is derived from the verse, himol yimol, there is reason to permit an Arab or a circumcised hill person, a gavnuni, to perform the circumcision as they are circumcised. And according to the one who says that circumcision may not be performed by a Gentile is derived from the phrase, you shall keep my covenant, then there is no reason to permit an Arab or a Gibeonite, the circumcised hill person, to perform circumcision. It must be by one who holds by the covenant, not just happens to be circumcised. And the Gemara raises an objection, and is it so, according to the one who says it is derived from the verse, he must be circumcised, himol yimol, that a Jew may not be circumcised by a Gentile, that there is a reason to permit a circumcised Gentile to perform the circumcision? But didn't we learn in a Mishna in Tractate Nedarim with regard to one who vows deriving benefit from those who are uncircumcised is konam for me, right? He's saying that he's vowing not to derive benefit from somebody who is uncircumcised. Nevertheless, he is permitted to derive benefit from uncircumcised Jews because they are not regarded as the uncircumcised. Occasionally, there's a Jew who's not circumcised, but they don't belong to the group known as the uncircumcised, which is to say Gentiles, but perhaps doesn't include, Arabs who circumcise, even though they do it for different reasons. That's the question, really. Deriving benefit from those who are uncircumcised is konam to me, is the vow. He is permitted to derive benefit from uncircumcised Jews because they are regarded as They are not regarded as the uncircumcised, but he is prohibited from deriving benefit from the uncircumcised of the nations of the world. So apparently, even though some Gentiles are circumcised, they are nevertheless considered as those who are uncircumcised. Right? When we say in our prayers, the uncircumcised, something about them, we're just talking about apparently all non-Jews, according to this view. Rather, there is a difference between them with regard to a Jew whose brothers died due to circumcision. Now, this is a case of even a pious Jew, from a pious family, who is not circumcised because he had two older brothers who were circumcised and developed complications and died. If that happens once, you still circumcise the next baby. If that happens twice, then when there's a third baby boy born, you don't circumcise him because we don't want to endanger his life. He's in no way excluded from the community of the Jewish people, even though he's uncircumcised, because it was a medical necessity. According to the one who says that the law is derived from the verse, and as for you, you shall keep my covenant, there is reason to permit such a person to perform circumcision because he's a full-fledged Jew. According to the one who says that the law is derived from the phrase, himol yimol, there is no reason to permit this Jew to perform circumcision, as even though he's a full-fledged Jew, he's not circumcised. Now, the Gemara rejects this suggestion as well, and is it so, and I'm almost done. Questions or comments, please get them in now. And is it so that that according to the one who says that the law is derived from himol yimol, there is no reason to permit an uncircumcised Jew to perform circumcision? But didn't we learn in a Mishna, in Nedarim 31b, that with regard to one who vows deriving benefit from those who are circumcised is konam to me? He is prohibited from deriving benefit even from uncircumcised Jews, and he is permitted to derive benefit from the circumcised of the nations of the world. So apparently, even though some Jews are not circumcised, they are nevertheless considered among those who are circumcised. So rather, there's a difference between these two opinions with regard to a woman. According to the one who says the law is derived from the verse, and as for you, you shall keep my covenant, there's no reason to permit a woman to perform a circumcision, as she is not subject to the mitzvah of circumcision. Women don't get circumcised. I know there's a practice by that name that applies to other, people in the world, but it does not apply to Jewish women. There is no reason to permit a woman to perform circumcision, as women are not subject to the mitzvah of circumcision, if the requirement is that only one who is subject to the mitzvah of circumcision is permitted to perform circumcisions. And therefore she would not be included among those who keep God's covenant. And according to the one who says that the law is derived from the verse himol yimol, there is reason to permit a woman to perform circumcision, as a woman is considered as one who is naturally circumcised, in the sense that she doesn't have a foreskin. She doesn't need to be circumcised. She's already a member of the covenant of the Jewish people. And so a Jewish woman should be permitted to perform a circumcision. And the law is that it's better for a Jewish man to do it. But if there is no Jewish man is available, a Jewish woman may perform circumcision. The Gemara raises difficulty against this explanation. And is there anyone who says that a woman may not perform circumcision? But isn't it written? Then Zipporah, Moses' wife, took a flint and cut off the foreskin of her son. She performed the circumcision of Moses' son, because Moses was being attacked by a snake at that moment. The Gemara answers that one should read into the verse, and she caused to be taken, as she did not take the flint herself. In other words, she caused the circumcision to be done. She didn't do it herself. But isn't it written? Not, and she caused to be cut off, but she cut off. So read into the verse, and she caused to be cut off, as she told another person to take a flint and cut off her son's foreskin, and he did so. And the Gemara provides an alternative explanation. If you wish, say instead, she came and she began the act, and Moses came and completed the circumcision. It's just another way to interpret it. But the fact is, Jewish women are permitted to perform circumcision, but it is preferable that a Jewish man do it. And that concludes our discussion of Mishnah number 2. We'll open tomorrow at the regular time with Mishnah number 3 here in chapter 2. A few questions. Shandora. As an African American in this country, these don't seem that far-fetched when you think of all the awful things that are still done to us on a regular basis. It also puts forcing black women to breastfeed their masters' babies in context. Wow. Thank you for reminding us of that. Exactly. When you think about these different periods in history where one people can oppress another, where one people can get away with committing violence on another. And I think we all know how much violence was perpetrated against African Americans in America during the period of slavery and even after the period of slavery. Just terrible, and they could get away with it, and thank God we live in a time now where certainly American justice is not perfect, far from it, but certainly the principle of American justice is that all are equal under the law, and to the extent that it's possible, it's always applied equally, and those who perpetrate illegal violence have to be caught, prosecuted to the full extent of the law. But thank you, Shandora, for the reminder that this stuff went on and goes on, and we have to be ever vigilant against it. Joseph, are heretics and apostates considered to be outside the covenant? I'm aware that most will say they are still Jews, but they are still affirmed as such legally. Yes, you probably asked that question before I read the quote from the Hazon Ish. Right, that so many Jews now, it's almost like, yeah, they're heretics, but they were never exposed to Judaism to know something different, right? And there's such a prevailing attitude, anti-faith attitude, not just in America, but in so much of the world, where when people adopt these apostate attitudes or heretical attitudes, we cut them some slack because they don't know better. And so, no, we don't permit, we still consider them our brothers. We don't permit them to die if they're in danger. And we approach them and extend to them love and kindness and try to show them, why Judaism is so beautiful and meaningful to us. And probably the most powerful way to do that is to have them over for Shabbos dinner. Annette, I'm so confused. I'm so sorry. What is the Gemara? Well, the Gemara is the commentary on the Mishna. Stick around for a few days. You can't just sit in one day and get it. But if you keep coming back day after day for a certain amount of time, it'll start to make sense what's going on here. But basically, we have the written law, which was the Torah given at Mount Sinai. Some oral laws were given even then along with it. And God initiated a process with Moses, and then Moses taught it to Joshua, Joshua to the elders to the prophets. It's been transmitted down ever since of how we answer questions that have come up, in every century since then that never could have been imagined by our ancestors, about how we apply Jewish law, which is stated in such a terse fashion in the Torah that to understand how to apply it in all the countless situations that come up in daily life and have over these millennia ever since, there is this oral tradition to help us answer those questions. Bill, the species of lions in Israel were the Asiatic lion, a close relative of the European lion. The European lion went extinct in the early Middle Ages. The Asiatic lions lasted longer and went extinct finally in, I want to say, the 1700s. Don't quote me on that part. In any case, if you've ever wondered why lions in European coats of arms look a little odd compared with African lions, it's because they're based on European and Asiatic lions. Right. No lions naturally in England, nor unicorns, which are both on the coat of arms of England. But the Jews, right, wherever they went, kept a relationship with the animals that are in the Torah, right, which are the animals that are indigenous to the Promised Land, even when we were exiled from that land. That's what I've got for us today, and with God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow, Monday, at the regular weekday time of